Hello and welcome back to An Abundance of Thrones. Brad's getting explicit early. Garrett here with Wade as well.
Hello.
This is a weekly podcast following the Game of Thrones season. This particular one is season 5, following episode 2, The House of Black and White.
And if you couldn't tell, this is an explicit podcast.
If you caught that early, yes.
Yeah, so just like the show is explicit, so is our podcast. If you don't like that, you are welcome to go somewhere else. Also, spoiler alert, we will be discussing this week's episode. If you have not watched it and do not want to know what happens, turn the podcast off. Go watch the show and then come back.
That's correct. We will be going through the episode in its entirety. This is not purely a highlight reel, so we do encourage you to get the initial education through the show and then see what we have to say following. That being said, what do you guys think of this episode?
I think it's good. We're getting into the action early. I felt like last season started kind of slow. It took a couple episodes to get into it. Here, even halfway through episode 1, we're really getting into it. And episode 2 did not disappoint.
It's interesting because the premiere episode on Rotten Tomatoes got 100% critic rating. Episode
Nice.
2 got 95.
Still respectable.
Very much respectable. Yeah, I agree with you. I think previous seasons, they spent more time kind of getting us reacclimated to the world that we're in. Whereas this season, episode 1 felt like it did that, and episode 2, it's getting thick. So I feel the next couple episodes really should be entertaining.
Well, as was this one.
Yeah, but as far as an action sequence and whatnot, we've had a lot of things happen this episode that I'm really curious to see what the fallout is. And we'll get to that. In the meat and grit of this episode, just for those who want to know a little bit more in the back, director, again, Michael Slovis, who did direct episode 1. And writers for this episode was the Double Ds, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Surprisingly, episode 2 had a pretty major hit in viewers, down to 6.8 million from 8 million last week.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. That's pretty interesting. Maybe we had a lot of new faces for the premiere that were testing the waters, and maybe some felt it wasn't for them, but 6.8 is still less than the season 4 finale, so that's a little surprising.
I wonder, though, I'm going to bang this drum again. Generally, when they release these numbers, it's for the 24-hour period following the release.
Correct.
And I wonder how much we're seeing, again, the effect of HBO now.
Yeah, and I was thinking that exact thing. I think actually
I don't have to watch it when it premieres. Hey, I can come back to this tomorrow.
Yeah, but I think the viewership numbers, if I read it correctly on Wikipedia, which is always true, obviously, is that it's truly looking at the air date and time. It is looking at that 9 o'clock Eastern showing.
Right.
Pure and simple, that time period. So,
okay.
Again, that's what Wikipedia says. That doesn't necessarily make it true.
Do these people just watching it, just these particular episodes, just so they said they can? They, friends go, "Oh, did you catch the season premiere of Game of Thrones?" And they go, "Oh yeah." And then or catch the thing just to stay, quote unquote, hip.
I don't think people are trying that hard. But I think a 1.2 million viewership hit, something had to be going on. I don't know if there's
just a thought.
Baseball conflict or what, who knows. Okay, getting into the episode now. We'll start off with the opening sequence. Brad, do you want to give us a run through there?
Sure. So the opening sequence, we have that beautiful flyover. We visit King's Landing, the eerie Winterfell with the flayed man, right?
Correct. Of House Bolton.
The Wall and Castle Black, Braavos and Meereen.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by the opening sequence.
Yeah.
For a couple reasons. We've seen throughout this show that they will make little adjustments to key areas. Case in point, Winterfell. And what was it, season 2 or 3 maybe? Where Winterfell was under siege, the opening sequence showed it in flames. Now it shows it with the banner of the flayed man. In the opening series premiere this season, we saw them tear down the Harpy from Marine, and yet the Harpy was still in the opening animation. So I was kind of bummed by that.
Yeah, it's not big stuff. I mean, we're harping on the opening title sequence, but it's stuff that they have built up before, this level of quality.
Yeah, they've sent the president.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's we're looking for this now, and it's like, hey, come on.
And there was one other thing definitely missing from the opening sequence.
I think I know what you're referring to.
Well then,
Dorne.
Yep.
We will get into it here in a little bit, but we did visit Dorne during the episode, yet it is not shown in the opening sequence.
I think that was a little more of a hook.
No, but they've done that before where they, the first time you go somewhere, it's in the opening. You have to pay attention to the opening to see where you're going to visit.
We just got done saying how we were bummed they didn't do certain things.
But they've set the precedence and the expectation to the viewers that the opening is not just a cut and paste deal.
I understand that, but did we really need to see that little snippet in Dorne? Not really. I think this was more of a hook to say, hey, things are starting to rumble in Dorne.
But we visited it in the show, and it wasn't in the opening sequence.
But there wasn't really much of importance.
The Water Gardens. It's been mentioned in multiple seasons now.
Well, in this episode.
But what Wade's saying is we didn't spend any significant time there. It felt to me like I'd have to go back and rewatch the opening for episode 1, but it looked like they reused the opening. Like, oops, wrong file, guys.
It's plausible. I mean, it's very true. No, I don't believe there was any variation from episode 1 to episode 2. Okay, so we leave the opening credits and we come right into Bravos, or some may prefer the rolled R of Bravos. We get to see Arya coming into the harbor, greeted by the Titan of Bravos.
Trying really hard to be brave. She's not afraid.
She's.
I'm not sure if she's trying to convince the captain or herself.
Yeah,
sword
that's true.
on hand.
Yeah.
Her hand on sword. Sorry,
hand on the sword. Well, she's got she's tied to the sword. She's lost it throughout the show, and she wants to make sure she doesn't lose it again.
Absolutely.
So the ship captain gives her a little story about the Titan. And then the Titan gives a booming yell to greet the ship and announce their arrival. And finally, in Bravos at this point, we are introduced to the House of Black and White. Either one of you, feel free to chime in anytime.
Yep.
Nice chime.
You guys both
really
suck.
nice chime there.
Sorry, he just left that open.
Yeah, I know. You couldn't resist. So, she knocks on the door and is greeted somewhat.
Yeah, greeted is a strong word.
Greeted is a misleading. It's more a case of what the heck do you want?
What are you selling? I don't want any Girl Scout cookies. The fuck out of here, kid.
So, she presents her coin and says her words. And is essentially left to rot on the step. And
yes, she is.
Yeah, so obviously this is part of maybe not obviously, part of an entrance exam.
Yeah,
they're not going to let just anybody in.
Yeah, I definitely saw this as a test. How bad do you want it? Are you just going to sit here and beg, or are you going to just run away or whatever? And now, my interpretation, though, is all the times we heard the prayer, which I'll talk about here in just a second, but I took that to interpret, in a sort of way, how many nights she was there. I mean, she said the prayer before she went to sleep, and we got her saying the prayer, 5, 6 times? Is that being a little too presumptuous for me? We saw the weather change. We saw it from night to day at least once.
Pardon me.
Yeah, Brad's dying.
So, yeah, I'm dying. Sorry, I'm fighting
done.
a sinus infection.
He
So
was sitting out on the steps.
He was sitting on the steps of.
I was sitting on the steps with
During
Arya,
reading.
and I'm dying.
Arya took up the only.
She took the
Dry
shelter
spot.
and kicked me out, bitch. Anyway, so you are correct as far as canon goes. She says this at night before she goes to sleep. I was kind of confused, though. There was alternating light sequences. I mean, she was saying it during the broad daylight, almost like she was saying it
Constantly.
from boredom. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me about her list was how short it's got.
Yes, I was just going to make that same point. It is getting shorter and shorter.
But there are still some
And-
deaths apparently she doesn't know about.
Well, like who?
Well, the
Mountain?
mountain isn't
Are you
quite
sure he's dead?
Didn't you say he was poisoned? Whatever. That's right. Unless you see a corpse, he's not technically dead.
Welcome
Exactly.
to Game of Thrones.
Yeah. If we haven't seen him dead, he is not dead yet.
That's correct. They last we saw him, he was laying on what we can assume is maybe his deathbed, and I believe it was Qyburn saying that he might be able to save him,
Correct.
but that he was poisoned, and that's the last we heard.
Dun dun dun.
Blood transfusion. Okay.
Pretty much. Okay, moving on from Bravos at this point.
So we find ourselves along a road. I'm kind of assuming it's the King's Road, but I don't know for sure. It may not be.
Yeah, we
I
saw
didn't quite-
in episode 1 where Podrick was saying that they were a couple days ride away from the King's Road.
Right.
So yeah, it's unsure whether we're truly on the King's Road here or not.
But we find ourselves in an inn where Brienne is, and please pronounce that properly, damn it. Brienne is quite despondent.
Yeah, she's not very happy.
But why?
Well, before we get to that, a couple things I want to maybe call attention to. Up until now, we've been under the impression that the whole countryside is war-struck, and there's not really many places that offer safe refuge. At least that's kind of what we've been shown up to this point. And we get to this particular inn. It's quite popular, and people seem to be having a decent time. And coincidentally, Brienne and Podrick just happen to be at the same inn as Peter Baelish and Sansa. Out of all the inns,
Well, they did, cross paths very closely in the last episode. We commented on how close they were.
yes.
And she did actually speak about seeing their carriage on the road.
They did not see. They did not. They saw that a carriage was coming. They had no idea who it was.
Brienne did speak of seeing their carriage on the road.
That was when they left the inn.
Was it?
Yes.
She watched which way they went.
Okay.
That was when they were being chased by horseback through the woods, and she caught them going off on another road, so
Yep.
that they would be able to follow in this episode, but not in the previous episode.
Alrighty then.
So
Yeah,
retract
so
my
it's kind of
statement.
just coincidental.
purely coincidental, which is kind of like, wow, really? Like, you stumbled onto Arya in the last season, just out of the blue in the middle of some freaking mountainous pass.
Couple days, here we go again.
And then you stumble upon Sansa in this inn, out of no real powers of deduction or looking. You just happen to be in the same room.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's kind of lazy writing or if there's a force at work behind the scenes.
You thinking maybe the eyes of the Seven have a hand in this?
Maybe. Or the one true god of light and fire.
Or the old gods?
Maybe.
The werewood tree?
Well, that is the gods of the Starks.
That is true. So we get a nice little confrontation where Brienne tries to pledge herself to Sansa after being pledged to Catelyn. And Baelish
And
points
Sansa-
out some very interesting little quirks about Brienne's past.
They need to shut you down.
Yes.
Yeah, her resume is not very strong.
No.
Even
And I
if
believe we
recharged.
commented on this last time as well.
Yeah. And also another kind of interesting point is that in season 3, I believe it was, Renly had talked about Brienne's loyalty coming without price or question. And Baelish points out that someone appears to have paid heavily for her loyalty this time around. Even though the armor and the sword were a gift from Jaime.
Jamie, yep.
They weren't a bribe. They weren't a payment. They were a gift for, sort of keeping him alive and kind of showing us, the audience, that, there may be more to Jaime than we've been led to believe up to that point.
Well, it seemed almost like a guilty conscience gift.
Yeah. But there was a conscience in order to feel guilty about it, though.
Absolutely.
So there's that.
And Sansa very handily tells Brienne to fuck off.
Yeah. You know what? You can go pound sand, thanks.
Yeah.
And we follow with a nice little horse chase, and Podrick can't ride a horse to save his life. Brienne has to
Before
save
we
the
get
day.
there, the one thing that stood out at me,
Okay.
and here we talk about, and it's been mentioned about Brienne's strength. She, one swing destroys the horse
Yes.
tie.
Now, you could put that against the Valyrian steel sword because they are sharp and hold their blade. Or you could look at it as the
True.
fact that she is a massive woman and holds her own against many, many men.
Continuing
But
on
even
that
with
fact,
Valyrian steel, you need somebody who knows how to wield it.
Agreed. No argument
What
there.
were you saying, Wade?
continue on that fact, even which adds credence to it, when she's fighting the guy on horseback,
Yeah.
she shatters his sword like
That's
butter.
right. She just cuts right through the sword. On the way out of the inn, she gets a guard running, essentially right into her blade.
Yep.
So yeah, we get this nice little chase. We get to see Podrick fail at yet another thing in life.
Granted, he's probably done better than what any three of us would do.
He's still alive.
He's
In
that.
Westeros, that's saying a lot.
That is true.
Considering.
It looked like, now, was it just me, or did he have a little bit of an eye for the barmaid pouring the ale?
No, he fancied her.
He fancied her a lot.
It could have been poor
She
writing.
doesn't.
Just
She
so
doesn't
he
know
looked-
how good he is in the brothels.
That's right. She probably doesn't want to know.
Oh, that's not nice. Okay, so we return
Switch
to King's...
scenes.
What?
I said switch scenes.
I was getting there. You interrupted. Going back to King's Landing, we are visited with Jaime entering a room with Cersei, and a very interesting box is on the desk in front of her.
I thought that was kind of cool the way it opens itself.
Really cool.
I want one.
Yeah.
Just send like snakehead boxes to people. Just be like, what's up?
Yeah.
Have it on
I
my
wonder if they're for sale at Shop of Thrones.
shop of... I don't know.
We are not paid by.
We're not endorsed by Game of Thrones or HBO affiliations. Please,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Please shop at Amazon for your Game of Thrones
Paraphernalia.
memorabilia.
Paraphernalia. I like it. So yeah, we're told to interpret this gift as a threat, as it contains one of two necklaces, and the only people who have those would be Cersei and Marcella.
Cersei didn't seem very thrilled by Jaime's analysis of the situation.
Go on.
It's a threat. Of course, it's a fucking threat.
You fucking idiot.
You know, and
Apparently, all your brains were in that one hand.
you know, and he tries to keep her calm and quiet because she is mouthing off, and apparently she has given her last fuck. She just does not care anymore.
I believe that to be a valid statement. So Jaime volunteers himself for a sensitive mission. He will be going to Dorne, not alone, but not with an army. He won't be asking any questions, and he's going to come home with Marcella.
This should be interesting.
That about sums that up.
But he needs help for this.
He needs help for this, so we move to Stokeworth, where we're visited by
Braun and Lollies.
Lollies, Braun's betrothed.
Yeah, definitely not beloved.
Yeah, well,
But
I mean,
betrothed.
he's kind to her. I mean, he's ignoring her most of the time, but he points out that your sister's a mean person, and mean people tend to get what they deserve.
Probably because he's willing to kill her to get the castle.
Well, yeah, I kind of figured that too, but
Eventually, after we marry, I'll just murder her.
so we get to see Braun's full title here now. He has been knighted, as we've seen in the past, and he is Sir Braun of Blackwater.
Yes.
Apparently that's how they get their surnames in Westeros, where you served to get your knighthood. We are educated by Lollies, about her older sister, and she's the one to inherit the grand castle that Bronn mistakenly thought that he would occupy upon marriage. Thank you.
Not so fast.
Wait a second.
Not
So-
today.
I'm sure you guys were able to pick up on it just from the acting, which, again, Game of Thrones, the actors and actresses are top notch. But I don't think it's ever specifically spelled out. In the books, it does mention that Lawless is, shall we say, a little slower than normal.
Yeah, not the sharpest dagger in the belt.
But her mouth
Yes.
has a lot of words.
It doesn't stop her from shutting up, though. But we're visited by a one-handed Lannister informing Braun that,
You can
you know,
still
I have
better.
good news for you.
You can,
Yeah.
you can still have it better. Just
So
after the
you're
news
not
of
going to get this girl or this castle.
Yeah, you won't get the girl or the castle. You have the chance of getting something better on both fronts.
Goes
All you
back-
have to do is come with me. On
goes
a
back
mission.
to an old Mario. Your princess is in the other castle.
Be funny.
I like that.
Be funny to do a little Mario meme with Game of Thrones.
That's brilliant.
Right there, Jamie turns into Toad. Your princess is in another
Turns into Bowser. or
In Dorne.
something. Womp, womp, womp. That's pretty funny.
Yep. So Lawless is going to go to Sir Willis Bracken.
Have we met him? Do we know who that is?
I don't believe so.
It sounds not familiar.
Yeah.
Poor Lawless,
Some
Lawless
lowly
though.
knight
She's
of some kind.
going to be so heartbroken. She could have had Braun, and she's got some reject. Oh well.
She got to
Yep.
meet Jamie Lannister. She was
She
happy
did.
about that
She was.
She was
smitten.
very thrilled by this.
Yeah, she's like, ooh.
until he told her to run along.
Now run along, dear. Oh, okay.
It's just not okay. She stood there for a couple seconds more, and he's like, "All right, go."
Leave. So yeah, she runs off. As a good wife in Westeros does, listen to her husband, especially when he's a killing machine.
Nice save there.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to make sure I made that applicable to the show and not the real world.
And
Wait.
scene. We end up somewhere else.
We do. We end up in Dorne. I'm getting you. I swear, I'm in the process of cutting to the scene, and you tell me to cut to the scene. Son of a bitch. So we are introduced to the water gardens of Dorne. We are introduced to Doran, who is what's his face's brother?
There was some creativity in the naming. Dorn and
Oberyn?
Doran.
Oberyn. Yeah, Oberyn, Prince Oberyn, Martell, right? Martell.
Marcel.
Yeah. So Doran,
You get a
Martell,
gold star.
and I pronounce this poorly, I'm sure, Ilaria.
Yep.
Now, are we to perceive Ilaria as Oberyn's wife or one of his many mistresses?
She is a paramour, as he described her when he first arrived at the capital for King Joffrey's wedding.
So that's the same one that was with him in King's Landing?
Yes.
Okay. And she is a sand. We were introduced to we knew that from last season. And she says that all the sand snakes, which are Oberyn's bastard daughters, are with her in willingness to revolt against the capital for the murder of Oberyn and their sister.
This is pretty serious.
Yeah. And Doran, clearly being maybe one a little more logic, says that it's not murder if he dies in a trial by combat. That kind of comes with the territory.
He kind of, well, how do I say this? Gave up for it, pledged for it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, he opted for trial by combat and he lost. That's not murder. That just sucks.
Yeah, I don't think Ilaria's used to Oberyn losing.
Yeah, right? It didn't quite go exactly the way they had planned.
Yeah.
But we get to see Marcella walking through the Water Gardens with Doran's son, who she has been pledged to. And
They seem happy.
They seem like they're not hating each other. But as
Completely
Ilaria
oblivious
says,
to what's going on.
exactly. This Lannister girl is in their home, eating their food, breathing their air, while the Lannister kin are killing Martells left and right in her mind.
Yes.
So, sad story for Dorne. And then we cut back to Marine, where Dario Naharis is leading Greyward and some other Unsullied to try to track down some of the Brothers of the Harpy. Dario points out that only if you understand fear can you think in a way of someone who's fearful.
Have you ever seen a wall bleed before?
I have now.
Yeah.
Hearing it scream is kind of an interesting trick.
It is.
Master Magician Dario Naharis.
That's right.
Every Tuesdays and Thursdays. At Caesar's Palace.
Sunday nights on HBO.
I believe it would be the Luxor, as the
There you
Luxor
go.
the pyramid, and they're in a pyramid in Marine.
Really?
See,
Oh, sorry.
tied
He's
that
not
together.
a headliner for Bravos.
He's not in Bravos.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's not a headliner for Bravos. Otherwise, he'd be at the coin capital of the world.
So they
That's right.
capture this this son of the Harpy, and we get some pretty interesting dialogue at what we can assume is the council for Daenerys. You have the former slave who is preaching about the former masters only know blood, fair trial means nothing to them, mercy means nothing. And we have Barristan trying to preach a little bit more logic and showing that you could be a better ruler than what these people are used to and what the people who are trying to overthrow you are.
Even the Mad King hold trials.
Yeah, well, but what he was pointing out is that the Mad King kind of did what he liked, and each time he felt more right and more powerful, but that didn't mean that he was doing the right thing. He was doing it for him. To which she gets a little education, you know. She thinks that's all malicious lies by the Lannisters and people that were against the Targaryens, and Selmy has to say, you know what? I was there for all that, and they're not lies. Your dad was a prick.
So it's interesting here, though, and we're in Meereen Visit A. We're going to revisit Meereen later.
Yes.
But between A and B, we're seeing the struggle here. You know, it's great to conquer and just march on through, and there's a different set of rules when you're at war. And now trying to maintain a civilized city and seeing that
It takes more to rule than just being present.
yeah, you know, Viserys didn't really educate Daenerys much. I mean, he belittled her and then
And
sold her
fondled her.
off to Drogo.
Yes.
And the the Khalasar is a very different place with a very different set of rules, and now she's trying to blend what
The
little
harshness
she
of the
knows of
Dothraki.
what little she knows of Westeros and her experiences on the Khalasar and these reformed slaves and slavers, and you know, it's not as easy as it looks. And
No,
she
it's-
has no experience.
That's correct. And that's actually just in talking, it made me think back to season 1 with Robert talking to Ned, saying that, winning the Iron Throne is easy, but maintaining it, that's the burden. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Marine here, we have this strong debate between trial and just blood for blood execution, and there's some conflict there. While staying in the continent or country of Essos, we get to visit our two favorite comedians, Varys and Tyrion, once again in a box. Tyrion's not happy.
This is getting old.
He's not pushing his shit through the holes and stuff.
That's
He
true.
might be. You don't know how long that ride is, and I didn't see a privy pot.
Well, there's probably like one small room in the back where it just drops on the road. It's like a plane, isn't
I'm
it?
just imagining if you were on a horse behind the carriage and you plop, plop, and you're like, oh, avoid that one.
It's worse than horse shit.
It is worse.
The horses have active steering assist for that.
But yes, we
Yeah, that...
Varys points out that the world sees eunuchs and dwarfs as what was the term? Repulsive, and in turn they see the world as repulsive, so they hide themselves in a box, whether figuratively or practically, but are never really satisfied with the box. Now, Varys says they're going to Volantis because that's where the road to Marine is. Now, when I first watched the show, I took that to mean purely a physical junction in the road. You got to go to one to get to the other.
Yep.
But in watching it again and to doing a little bit of research, I'm wondering if when he says the road to Marine isn't maybe more figurative. If maybe they're looking for a guide or an advisor or someone to help them on their path.
So much I can't say.
You're a son of a bitch, you know that? Did you get any of that, Wade? But did you just see it as it's a junction in the road and they've got to get to one before they get to another?
Well, it's always with mystery for me.
And
not
it's Varys.
knowing, and it's Varys, so it's like, I'm just going to sit back and see what happens.
Well, this is purely a assumption and a hope. This comes from essentially no prior knowledge. I mean, I have forgotten what little I know about books 4 and 5. But there's really only one person who has had, I'll say this carefully, not a relationship with, but is involved or had been involved with Daenerys, who's no longer in her good graces, giving her counsel, who might reside in Volantis for the time being. Ooh, speculation. I speak, of course, of Jorah Mormont. Again, this is purely speculation, but maybe he comes back into the fold and helps maybe
Betray her again.
Well,
I mean, sorry.
He'll never have that. I mean, Dario's got that. But maybe Tyrion and Varys help reunite the two and in turn open the pathway for themselves. Back to King's Landing. We were greeted with a friendly face plopped down on a table.
It's Tyrion. No,
it's a dwarf with a scar across its face, though. So we find out that Cersei is promised a noblehood. Noblehood?
Lordship.
Lordship. Thank you. Anyone who brings her Tyrion's head is promised a lordship and land. So everyone is out killing dwarves.
Yeah, it's kind of open season now.
It is a little bit. And even she said that just because these guys brought her the wrong head, she didn't want to punish them because she doesn't want to sway any other hunters. She wants everyone out there in full force hunting Tyrion down.
Even if that means there's some innocent dwarves hurt in the process.
I don't think Cersei much gives a shit for that.
Yeah.
She already sees Tyrion as a monster. She's like, oh, screw
Yeah,
it.
what is she going to see all the other ones that are not related to her? And we get kind of an interesting little quirk from former Maester Qyburn, who requests the head for his own experiments.
Yeah, that's kind of dark.
He's got some secrets, I think. I mean, we know he was stripped of his Maester chain for his malpractice, so to speak.
It's a nice way of putting it.
Thank you.
Yes. Unusual experiments.
But clearly, that hasn't stopped him from his curiosities. So,
Well, technically, he's like, well, screw it. I don't need to hide it anymore.
Yeah,
what do I have to lose?
I've already been stripped of my title, so fuck it.
Well, and that's the thing, they stripped him of his chain, but that didn't remove his knowledge.
It didn't remove his curiosity.
No.
Exactly. So we transition from this cellar-esque room to the small council.
Cersei's got some appointments to make.
And some...
And some relatives to piss off.
Yeah.
She's stacking the deck and pissing people off.
Yeah. There's a really good confrontation here between her and Uncle Kevin.
But before that, we have a lot of ass-kissery going on. Everyone wants to be the hand of the king, and she's giving all of the small council new responsibilities. Lord Tyrell was former master of ships and is now master of coin, and he's pretty smug with his new title. He kind of sat up straight and kind of
lifted his
well,
chin.
thank you.
The king noticed how good I am at spending money.
Yeah, Grand Maester Pycelle says that it's been customary in the past that the Grand Maester step in as the hand, to which Cersei pretty much talks right over him because she doesn't respect a goddamn thing he says, and appoints Qyburn as the Lord of Whispers.
That didn't sit well.
No. Pycelle's pretty pissed that Qyburn's getting any sort of respect or titles, given that he has, quote-unquote, disgraced the Citadel with his, I'll say it again, malpractice, because it sounds fun to say, and I'm pretty proud of myself for saying it.
It's a big word for you.
I know, it's got multiple syllables and, like, the legal and stuff. And then Cersei tries to appoint her Uncle Kevin as the Master of War, and her uncle sees right through her bullshit.
I think this unnerves Cersei a little bit. Just judging from the reaction. She's not used to... I guess it was only Tywin that pushed back on her at all. Well, I suppose Tyrion did a little bit, but he played along.
Yeah, but she felt she could overpower Tyrion, so it didn't get to her as much.
But Kevin really gives it to her. I don't recognize you or your authority. I'm here to serve the king. She tries to almost guilt trip and blackmail him. Oh, I see. You're not going to listen to your king. No. I will listen to him. And if he decides he wants to speak to me, I'll be happy to listen to him. But I'm not going to put up with your shit.
Yep.
He can send for me in Casterly Rock.
Yep.
Yep.
If the king wants me here, the king can tell me so himself. I do not respect your authority. You are the queen mother and nothing more.
Kind of a slap in the face.
Totally a slap, and no one's done it up until now, and she is not happy with that.
Well, I guess she has one more name to add to her nightly prayers.
And with the dark of night, we travel north to the Wall. Gilly, our favorite bucktooth wildling, being taught to read by the Princess Shireen.
I think this is really sweet of her. It seems like Shireen has a really big heart.
Well, I think we saw this in last episode too, where they showed her and her mother watching Mance Rayder burn.
Raider.
Yeah, I mean, her mother was kind of smirking that, one more infidel, so to speak,
I think she was
is being
kind of
put
reveling.
to death, whereas Shireen, she's got a little bit more of a heart, like you said. She doesn't find the joy or see the purpose in a lot of this.
I wonder how much of this has to do with her suffering.
And that's a good point. I think that's kind of where they're going with this, which is important to say that this is a big variant from the books. In the books, Shireen did not have grayscale. It was a jester that kept her company or something like that.
No, she had it.
I don't think she did. She?
Yeah.
Oh, then there was a whole jester role though that they cut out. That I remember. I remember vividly.
Yes, there is a jester that
apparently is not important in the show.
Not at all.
So Sam's reading on about the youngest Lord Commander, who was a Stark, appointed at age 10, and Gilly, is kind of giving him grief about all the grief that he's been giving her about not being able to read or lack of practice.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have a lot of patience for her.
Yeah, and I mean it's tough. He's a highborn. He was taught to read early on. Obviously not as early as Shireen, who was taught to read at 3. Sam was pretty surprised by that. And then Shireen's mom comes in and says, you need to stay away from all the wildlings because your dad just killed their king and they might try to hurt him by hurting you. She's not wrong. I mean, you don't want to put your kid in harm's way, even though you don't really care about your kid. You care about, Stannis. But I'm not seeing the flaw in her logic. Yeah, we see her as crazy most of the time, but I think on this front, even though we know Gilly to be trustworthy, doesn't mean that they do. So
right.
It's important to know.
There's, unfortunately, for Shireen, there's another set of rules that comes along with being the child of a king.
That's right.
You don't get to hang out with just everybody.
That's right. Now, we do get a little bit more education on grayscale, as Gilly says that she had 2 sisters who were afflicted, and apparently it spreads body-wide and turns you primal, according to what she was saying about her sisters.
I wonder where they're going to bring this in later, hint, hint. It should be interesting.
It should be indeed. Speaking of interesting, we, from last episode, we thought Jon was going to get quite the lashing from Stannis for putting Mance out of his misery instead of letting him burn as sentenced. That didn't quite go according to that plan, did it?
He got kind of a slap on the wrist.
I don't even think he got a slap. I think he just got a finger waved at him. And then, oh, by the way, I need you to have the last name of Stark. So if you pledge yourself to me, I'll proclaim you as a legitimate child of Ned Stark and appoint you Lord of Winterfell.
This is a tough one for Jon because he's always wanted to be a legitimate child.
Yeah, the Lord of Winterfell I don't think was nearly as important as becoming a
Stark.
Stark.
Just the name, yeah.
Being seen as his father's son.
Yeah, exactly. Because, Robb was always going to be Lord of Winterfell, so... And Robb and Jon got along so well. I don't think that would have ever crossed his mind to preempt Robb.
No, agreed.
But, to be Jon Stark. It's a tough choice.
It's a tough choice. And we see that he wrestles with this for a little while and points out to Sam that, look, I took a vow. I said the words. I expressed my oath. And if I don't take that seriously, what kind of leader or lord would I be by forsaking those to pursue this other venture?
And I think this is an interesting transition, and we get where and why Sam was researching the history of the commanders of the Night's Watch.
Yes, Sam had a little... Sam was scheming.
Yes. So that brings us into our next scene where Jon is wrestling and has kind of made up his mind that Stark is not for him, or at least Winterfell is not for him. And we come into the mess hall where it is election time at the Night's Watch.
Election time at the Night's Watch, split up until this point between 2, Sir Alistair Thorne, the prick, and Sir Dennis Mallister, who... we haven't really had any interactions with. We find out he ruled over one of the other castles along the wall and kept it running and kept the wildlings at bay while at his post. He's been at the wall for a long time, and not many much more deserving than that.
So, I find the numbering here interesting, and I'm curious how this comes back later.
Okay.
Because, well, obviously, George Martin could have picked any number he wanted to, right?
You're talking about the title or which Lord Commander is being voted upon?
Yes, so he is the
quantity?
998th.
That's correct.
I'm just curious why he picked so close to 1,000 and didn't pick 1,000, with all the miraculous things in the Stark family's life. With Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven, and Jon and the Wall, and the dire wolves, and.
Sure.
I almost would have thought there would be some significance to him being the 1,000th commander. This grand, even number. But 998. It makes me wonder if he's got something up with that.
That's an interesting point. I didn't really dig too deep into that, aside from realizing that, wow, that's really close to 1,000. And you have to take into consideration, it's tough to say how long a Lord Commander reigns. We don't know how long Mormont was a commander. Is it 10 years? Is it 50 years? If you did an average, the Night's Watch has been around a long fucking time.
Yeah.
And they've been
thousands of years.
What's that? Yeah, I mean, if you were to average that each Lord Commander was reigned 10 years, we're nearly at 1,000 Lord Commanders. That's 10,000 years of Night's Watch.
Yeah.
Which, damn, Westeros has got a long ass history. They haven't even developed the rifle yet. So Sam shows a backbone. Not only does he speak up in front of a crowd, he has the audacity to call out Alistair Thorne's right-hand man, I forget his name, the Weasel. Call him out on hiding in the storeroom with Gilly and the baby. Points out that...
Standing in a puddle of his own making.
Standing in a puddle of his own making. He doesn't disrespect Thorne. He says he fought admirably. There's no denying that. But when he was injured, Jon was the one we turned to. Jon was the one who took up the reins. He put his life on the line on multiple occasions. He's the one who Mormont chose and who was willing to avenge Mormont, hearing of his passing. He is the one that we look to for leadership. And that swayed enough of the crowd away from Thorne, as it was a tie vote.
What were you going to say, Wade?
Nope. I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay.
Clear my throat.
I'm sorry. I thought you started to speak up and Garrett did his talking. So we end up with a tied vote.
Yep.
Tied vote. I would like to point out, though, that Maester Aemon got a little bit of a smirk when Sam was pointing the finger.
Uh-huh.
That was...
He was quite enjoying that.
He was. He's seen enough bullshit for a blind man.
Yes.
And that,
so he cast the deciding vote.
Yep.
The
No surprise here.
998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch is...
Jon Snow. No surprise, obviously, on his voting, because we see that in season 1, when Jon goes to the wall, that Maester Aemon does confess that, yes, he's a Maester, but he's also a Targaryen by blood. And you see some heart-to-heart with them about making the tough choices on oath versus love, etc. So it's safe to say that was no surprise.
Agreed.
And we go back to Braavos. Arya hunting pigeons. Apparently she does quite well.
That was a really slick stroke.
A quick swipe of the sword and off with its head. She is in the wrong franchise.
She definitely has been practicing her water dancing.
Water dancing, that's right. And then she's confronted in an alleyway.
She's got a lot of spunk.
She does. And again, back to your comment earlier, I'm not sure if she is truly unafraid or she's trying to tell herself that she's unafraid.
Right. But yeah, she confronts all three ruffians and, informs them that the sword will do them no good when they're dead.
That's right. And a skirmish is about to break out when
the doorman of
the doorman of the house steps out of the shadows.
Yes, the House of Black and White. And they scatter. This guy obviously holds some power.
People know who he is. Now, that's another thing. The House of Black and White's got to have some freaking influence. If any man from Bravo sees that iron coin, knows exactly what to do with it, and would do it without question. So
that's like, have you ever what have I seen it on? Like store loyalty cards, or more important, drop it in any post office box, postage guaranteed. We'll take care of you. Just get it back to us.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that. If you're carrying one of these coins, just go ahead and bring them to us. We'll take care of you. Don't worry about it.
But it didn't sound like they do rewards anybody, because he just dropped her off at the door. It's not like he was there to claim a reward or anything. It was just, if you're from Bravos and you see an iron coin, that's what you do, period. No questions.
Well, move on a little bit, because I want to revisit this, but not until we...
Okay, fair enough. So Arya follows back our gatekeeper back to the House of Black and White. She asks some key questions, and we get a visit from an old friend.
Yes.
Jaqen H'ghar, once again. I say the name only because that's the name we associate with the face.
That guy.
But he proclaims that a man is not Jaqen H'ghar. A man is no one. And that is exactly who a girl must become.
So, this is where I wanted to get. The reward of bringing somebody with an iron coin to the House of Black and White is you don't die.
Yes. Exactly.
I mean, we've seen the things that Jaqen H'ghar, or this man that is no one, can do.
Yes.
In a maximum security prison, he could sneak out and murder the named names and sneak back into his cell, and nobody had a clue.
Precisely.
So, if you're carrying an iron coin, your reward is you don't die today.
But then the question is, how does anybody know? If I'm in Westeros and someone shows me an iron coin for the House of Black and White, and I kill them or leave them there, how does the house know?
Do you want to risk that?
And we return.
There's a lot of power in propaganda.
There's only one person.
That's true.
There's only one person in Black and White, and he's the only one who gets out the coin. So he's like, I didn't give you one.
That's a plausible concept, supposedly. So Arya enters into the House of Black and White, and we return to Marine. Brad, I'll let you run through this one.
Sure. So, the former slave on Dany's small council has decided that he is able to read between the lines, and Dany really wants to deal with the son of the Harpy, but she can't. Her hands are tied by politics and by law. So, to help her out, to do her a favor, he takes the son of the Harpy out and quite brutally nails him to the wall.
Yes.
I mean,
mask and all.
Yeah.
Where to kill the masters on this, written in blood on the side.
Written in blood on the wall.
Picked a good wall to nail him to.
Yes, he did.
Scouted it.
So, Dany's pissed.
Yes, she is.
He has taken the law into his own hands, and she is struggling with this. Obviously, the speech from Salmi has sunk in. She is really trying to learn how to do right, how to rule correctly, and now she's faced with the decision of having a definite lawbreaker on her hands of murdering one of her prisoners. And so she passes judgment that he is to die.
He is to die. The law is the law. So she orchestrates essentially the entire city to come together under her
Pyramid?
stage permit, so to speak, and expresses that there was a man held awaiting trial, and this man murdered him, and the punishment is death. We hear a lot of chanting from one side of the crowd.
For mercy.
For mercy. To which she, for sake of argument, disregards that chanting and carries out the task at hand.
It is amazing how quickly the attitude of the crowd changed.
It is. It is.
It's kind of seen is that, oh, they're happy to be free, but, oh, wait, now there's laws you have to obey.
I think from the slaves, they thought that Daenerys came and freed them and that she was on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And now she just killed a former slave, so she must be on the master's side. And so there's I think the slaves feel that there's a betrayal there.
Well, and then you can speak back at the council with hers is that the former slave that she had killed very much brought up that point is they don't know this. It's only blood with them.
Yep.
It's, black or white. But apparently it's only blood with the slaves too.
Correct. It's important to point out here, though, that really this action against this former slave was not... it was more an action to show the masters that, look, I'm not just for them. This guy broke a law and a direct command, and his punishment is death. Just because he's a slave doesn't mean I'm going to let him free. There are penalties for everybody, and he's just as much a citizen as anybody else. So she's trying to play that fine line of following the rules, showing everybody that the rules apply to everybody, and it's not exactly winning the crowd over in this instance. I mean, the slaves are revolting, former slaves are revolting, causing mass chaos.
Well, it's that old concept that justice is supposed to be blind. It doesn't matter who the offender is or who the wronged party is.
Correct.
The law is the law, and you enforce it evenly.
Yes, and that's what she's trying to do. It's just not being well received.
Well, it kind of, the way the scene closes, it kind of looks like she's got a civil war on her hands.
Yes, it does. Which brings us to the final scene of this episode. Some of the best CG work I think any of us have ever seen.
Agreed.
Yep.
Daenerys is in her room, apparently. She hears a knock outside, and she is greeted by a familiar face.
Aww.
A little scaly.
A little scaly face. Drogon perched above the pyramid, saying, "Hi, Mom. Look how big I got."
Yeah, he doesn't stick around, though.
No, but he's definitely nowhere near as hostile as Viserion or Rhaegal were.
Well, he hasn't been chained in a dungeon for goodness knows how long.
Also true.
That'll do that to a person. Or to a dragon.
But, I mean, just the way they do this, man, I was just awestruck by the CG work here. The interaction level, it wasn't just looking at a green screen. There was depth to it. There was the right amount of shading, all that. I mean, it's amazing. Bravo, HBO. Bravo.
No, I don't know that they are funded by Bravos, but good guess.
Yeah, well, maybe. The Iron Bank reaches far and wide.
What were you going to say, Wade?
Garrett said bravo. I went, Os.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly. Yeah, the quality of this is just amazing. At the risk of reaching a little bit into our Abundance of Naught podcast, it's kind of a slap in the face to all the other networks. Look, you can have a subscriber base that will fund you directly, and you can do amazing stuff.
It doesn't quite work out for some of their direct competitors, though.
No.
They're not quite pulling out all the stops as much as HBO and Thrones are.
Yeah, but those shots, it's like, here, feel the world.
Yep.
This is like, for the others, it's like person, 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 person. Okay. Next episode.
I guess.
Yeah. This is like person, and this is where they are. Feel it.
Feel it.
Drink
Love
it in.
Revel it.
Don't look up the Titan skirt, but whatever.
And with that,
yeah, that's a good a point as any, I suppose, to wrap this up on. We do appreciate you guys for listening, and do let us know what you think on Twitter or Facebook, and follow up with some of the episodes with some of your favorite thoughts. Tweet us with hashtag Abundance Thrones, and we'll read some of those shout-outs on the next podcast. Thanks for listening.
absolutely.
We'll see you then.
Fala Morgulis.